Veto session week of This Week in Missouri Politics. Too much news for any one guest. We're going to have our opinion maker panel over the whole time. So we got a big one. Jeff Rainford, the godfather of St. Louis. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Scott, glad to be here. It's been a long time, and I'm really glad to be back.
Lisa Clancy, St. Louis Board of Aldermen. St. Louis County Council. You have all these different boards up here. It's hard for a hillbilly to remember. Which one is it?
St. Louis County Council, Councilwoman from the 5th District. Good to be back.
Daniela Velazquez, St. Louis City Council, but it's not even a city council, right?
Well, it is a city. It's the Board of Aldermen.
And what part of the town are you from?
I have 6 wards, so Shaw, Tower Grove Park, Compton Heights, and a little bit of Dutchtown. So South City.
I think folks know Tower Grove Park. No matter where you're at in the state, right, you've been there.
Exactly.
Gregg, Keller, the silver-tongued devil from Twitter. Welcome back to the show. So looking dapper as always.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Lisa, tell me, you're involved in the abortion rights. It's always interesting to me. Do you call it health care? Is it abortion? Kind of depends on where you're coming on it from. These IPs, there's several out there. What is the right one? It feels like to me you could do a more aggressive one, but a little less chance of passing. You do a more reserved one, probably a pretty good chance of passing, right? What's going to happen?
So Missourians for Constitutional Freedom have filed 11 initiative petitions. Each of those would restore reproductive health care, reproductive freedom in a way that we haven't seen in decades in Missouri. And so I am supportive of those.
What's the range? If you've got 11, there's got to be some variation in that, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not super scrubbed into the technical minutia of those. We've got there are some court hearings coming up on Monday, actually, to go over the ballot language and also the fiscal note. So we'll see what comes out of the courts. And we'll see what voters have to say when we start collecting signatures and voting on it, hopefully.
Greg, it's been interesting to watch the Republicans fight at every turn they can. It's interesting, folks that don't want to use the government are using the government here pretty aggressively.
I actually like this argument for Republicans. I mean, I think we need to do a better job of defining the terms, and I don't think as a party or as a pro-life movement we've done that at all. I think the first thing we need to remind people of is that the stance of the National Democrat Party on abortion is that it should be taxpayer funded in all cases for all people, all the way up until and including live birth. Republicans tend to generally coalesce around a 15-week limit on when abortions can take place. That enjoys 55% from the American voting public as a whole. That's with, exceptions for rape and incest and life of the mother. Both of our United States Republican senators support that. So I think we as a party need to do a better job of defining who the real extremists are on this issue.
Jeff Rainford, I always love having you on. Always think, no matter your personal view, you can find some common sense in it. It feels to me like Missourians you can argue they're a little pro-life, a little pro-choice. They vote probably a little bit better to be pro-life in the state when you actually talk about a candidate. But where the law is right now, it feels a little further out there than where your regular Missourian is.
Yeah, I think Missouri is like the country, which is, I think the American people, at least a majority of them, want abortion to be available but limited, right? So in the case of protecting the mother's life, and then maybe the first trimester. So I think they want it available, but they want limitations on it. And I think Gregg's kind of hit on a point. To me, it feels like both parties are out on the extremes. It feels like the Republican Party doesn't want it to be available, and the Democratic Party doesn't want it to be limited. And I think they're both off. It'll be interesting to see, however, the middle is kind of squishy. We are not passionate about what we do. And the right to life people and the pro-choice people are absolutely, they may be united in trying to kill these things because right to life it goes too far, and the pro-choice people doesn't go far enough, and maybe they combine to try to limit us in the middle who are like, hey, let's be, as you said, common sense about it. And it'll be interesting to see whether the passionate people on the right and the left kill something if it kind of does go down the middle.
Alderwoman, I remember Bill Clinton saying something about safe, legal, and rare. I'm not sure that there's not some version of that doesn't probably strike where your average Missourian is.
Well, so SLU did a recent poll, and 58% of Missourians are in favor of not having an abortion ban, right? And we've seen, I think, since last year, since SCOTUS struck down the federal, the constitutional right to an abortion, that in states that had a ballot initiative, including red states like Kentucky and Montana, that they've made it so that the people want access to abortion. Now, I think the question is, do we trust Missourians to make decisions about their own body and their own family? And I think that's the real thing here. Now, whether some of these things we get into bureaucratic conversations about what is viable and what is not, but ultimately, if you're at the doctor, it's really about your health, and that's what matters in that moment.
Let's talk about what runs the state, which is Republican primaries. Mm-hmm. I assume some version of this, though there's enough money behind it, something they'll get on the ballot. Maybe more than one, but certainly something. Probably the Republicans will want that on in August. They won't want to deal with that in November. How does this affect a Republican primary?
I think you're right. I think they will put it on in August. I mean, ours is a strongly pro-life party, and this is a Republican. This is a pro-life state. Again, when you define the terms and say that abortion should be legal up until a certain point, which is what the majority of Republicans believe, and when you contrast that with what Democrats believe, I want to run on this issue. I just think we need to define the terms better.
So some aspiring state Senate candidate works very hard in fundraising, can afford to have your advice. What do you tell them to handle on this?
Well, most of them can't afford my advice. But I would tell them in a Republican primary that clearly you need to be a strong pro-life candidate. I wouldn't get down into the rabbit hole for political purposes in a Republican primary in this state talking about is it 6 weeks, is it 15 weeks, what is the case, how many exceptions do you accept? You just need to be out there and be a full-throated pro-lifer.
You've actually knocked on doors, won some tough elections. Tell me, if this is on in August, does that have any carryover into November next fall?
I think so. I think it's going to energize the Democratic base for sure.
Are there some women that maybe they don't talk about this at dinner, like most normal people don't, but they're a little bit put out by being totally banned, and they decide where they maybe have voted Republican because they cared about cops or taxes or whatever, but they're not sold on it. Maybe Trump made them a little less attached to the Republican brand. Is this what moves somebody over to vote Democrat?
Well, again, I think it depends on, and go right back to what Gregg said. If one party or the other is viewed as being extreme on this, I think it's going to hurt them. If the Republicans are forced, because of their primary system, if they're forced to take a hardcore no against abortion, I think that will hurt them. If our party, if the national folks are like, we're going to be against these sort of, where the American people are, at least a majority of them are, then I think it'll hurt us. So whoever is
being the hardcore no party, when your party, with a super majority, passed this law, everybody trumpeted being the first person to sign the letter or whatever to make it law. I think it's hard for Republicans to get around that, right?
In Missouri, it is. I don't see any movement in the General Assembly towards what Gregg said, which is to have Keogh, the lieutenant governor, came out and said something that seemed really common sense. And what I saw is Republicans were ready to pound on the guy. I think the Republican position seems to be to ban abortion, if you ask me. Now, sure. Gregg talked about a nuance, which I think makes sense. And I do think politically, when you're on one extreme and you're out of touch with the people of your state, the only argument you have is that the other side is out of touch too.
You just ran a Democrat primary. If this is on in August, there'll be Democrat primaries as well. It's like a Republican. You might as well be with Missouri Right to Life, hardcore no, and try not to talk about the details. On the Democrat side, you go with the harder position, right?
Well, I think it's really about Missourians making choices about their own bodies. And when we talk about the terms, we've kind of made it very binary here about pro-life, but pro-life is also maternal mortality and maternal health care. Pro-life is, what are we doing for our children and their health, right? So, this is really about, do we trust Missourians to make decisions about their own bodies? It's about liberty, really, at its core.
Speaking of trusting Missourians, I remember a Republican Party back in the day that talked about local control, and then John Cawthorn won this state Senate race that flipped the majority up in northeast Missouri, and I haven't heard a Republican say local control since. You got cities and counties have taken, the Republicans have been the majority 20 years. Lots of, it's reflected in Missouri state law. Now you see a lot of cities trying to find ways to enact, how do you say this, right? You'd say go around the state if you was just talking at West Plains, but if we're talking here, maybe you're trying to affect change you feel is good and maybe barely would regard the state statute. How would you say it?
Well, I would say is why is the state trying to make decisions for people in communities when they know what's best for their own community?
Well, they would say they do, but Department of Shar Jones has a plan. Maybe the whole Board of Aldermen have a plan. Basically to outlaw outlaw assault rifles in the city. Is that pretty much it?
So there's one bill that passed recently about limiting open carry of assault weapons, and that was for Bill 29, and that was one of those bills that
folks do that up here? Do they walk around with machine guns?
In downtown St. Louis, we actually had some younger people walking around downtown late at night, and the cops said they couldn't do anything, and it really created a lot of fear because it was on television, So now, will a ban? First of all, let's set the politics aside for a second. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, is that the Republican position on guns in the state of Missouri does contribute to crime. Having said that, the reality in the city of St. Louis is, given what state law is, that the city can't pass anything that's any more restrictive than state law. And so my position is let's continue to speak out and make sure everybody understands that the reason that everybody in the city of St. Louis is armed to the hilt is because we have non-restrictive gun laws. But then we got to do whatever we got to do to make the city safe, and we can't do fake things like saying we're going to pass a law that we can't pass. And so we got to get the criminals under control. There's a change in the circuit attorney. I think that's going to be good.
Seems like that's going well.
It's going well. We have a new chief. He needs to be given some time. There are some alternatives that the city is on mental health and intervention and some other things that need to be given some time. But the idea that we're going to claim that we can make the city safer by passing gun laws that we're never going to pass, it seems to me to be misleading.
Gregg, here's the thing that seems odd to me. We don't like to admit it out in Reynolds County, but frankly, we take St. Louis money and pay for our roads and schools and things. But then we elect folks that want to tell St. Louis how to do things. It does seem a little counterintuitive that the successful folks, we're trying to tell them how to do things when they kind of pay for our way to go.
Yeah, I must have missed the statistics that show that there's a huge crime problem in the rural parts of Missouri. The fact of the matter is it's the stated position of the Democrat Party that they want to defund police. They've done that everywhere that they've had an opportunity to. They simply have. And everyone in St. Louis, I'm a lifelong St. Louis, and we all know it. And there's not any trust in the Democrat Party because we know that one step towards banning this, listen, I take National Democrats and the Democrat Party at their word. They've said they want to get rid of handguns altogether. I take them at their word. And so they don't have a lot of trust when they say, oh, we just want to take this one thing. Because we all know that the ultimate goal, listening to their party, is to take all guns away.
It's a little weird, though. If we sit in a patio for a ball game, and we saw an old boy walking by the old Velazquez with a machine gun, that's a little weird to me, right?
I think it's a little bit weird. The question is it legal? And Democrats have a little problem called the Second Amendment. They should probably try reading it sometime.
Second Amendment, first of all, none of us are constitutional scholars, but there's a lot of arguments all the way around on the Second Amendment. But, to me, it's sort of like food. The more food I have in front of me, the more food I'm going to eat. The more guns there are, the more people are going to get killed.
It's real. I just love...
The other thing I want to get to with my good friend Gregg is he said defund the police. And I say this rhetorically, how big a raise did the Highway Patrol get this year? City cops got a 9% raise. So, yeah, there are, like in the extremes in your party, there are Democrats who have said
there should be more highway patrolmen
in certain districts they should do it. But the fact of the matter is that in Democratic cities, they are funding the police. We got a new chief. The mayor was at a breakfast the other day, or lunch the other day, honoring police. The police in the city are getting a 9% raise. They're begging for help in recruiting cops. I hear rhetoric, but I don't see action on defunding the police.
They're in favor of these bills. The police chief actually is a constituent of mine, and I've had my first conversation with him. He spent 2.5 hours with me, and so he is committed to both the safety of St. Louis as well as, I think, responsible gun ownership. And that's the conversation that we're not having here. Is it really responsible? If you're a responsible gun owner, are some of these things that people are doing irresponsibly? Does that give you, is that a good thing for guns?
Lisa, to me, though, yeah. I've heard from some media reports that there might be a bit of a murder issue in St. Louis. And I doubt those murders are being committed with machine guns. They're being committed with handguns, right? So banning machine guns, yes, I think that's awfully odd that you're walking down the street with a machine gun. But I'm not going to help the murder situation, right?
In St. Louis County, we're seeing similar problems, particularly in North County. We're looking at what we can do in St. Louis County as well. The state it appears, has given us some leeway. No one's taking guns away with these policies. We're simply enforcing that you have to have a concealed carry permit or an open carry permit on you to be carrying these weapons. But we also need to talk about prevention. We need to talk about, policing is just one facet of public safety. We need to talk about our health department and everything that they're doing from a prevention side to engage young people, especially, who seem to be a big piece of the concern here.
When this will pass, right?
Well,
the board bill that says it'll outlaw carrying these machine guns around town, right?
Well, the Board Bill 29 passed. There is a suite of bills that will be proposed in September when we return. I filed one that's about you can't deface a gun. So you can't. It adds an additional penalty for sawing off a serial number, right? So they're sort of common sense things like this that if you're a responsible gun owner, you're probably
will this actually withstand a court challenge?
They're designed to fit in that narrowly tailored piece.
Do you have a prediction? Will this actually become law? court challenge?
Well, I think a lot of this, I mean, I think it's already a crime to deface a gun and take off the serial number. So, I mean, to the extent that it's just duplicative, I mean, I don't know if there's any there.
Well, does that have to withstand a court? Can you get the county write a bill and withstand it?
Kansas City actually, I believe, enacted the policy that that board bill was at 29 passed in 2016, and that was supported by the state fraternal order of police. So we know this has law enforcement support, but there has never been a court. I don't know if there's been an actual court challenge against it, but it's withheld.
It does say back to blue, right until the blue wants to tell them, hey, we actually need to do this. Then it's like, whoa.
Well, I mean, there are other issues that I have a disagreement with police, but if I had a son or a daughter who was a police officer going down a dark alley late at night and you don't know how heavily armed the criminal is, I'd be scared that, my son or daughter is going to come home.
Well, since we have so much agreement on this, we're going to come back and talk about Trump. But first, go to showmissouri.com. There's your Missouri one county at a time. Went to Dent County, Angie Curley, Daryl Skiles, good folks down there to talk all things the history of Dent County, right in beautiful Missouri, southeast Missouri. We'll be right back with This Week in Missouri Politics after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Thanks for joining us. Justice and Journalism with Judge Mike Carter. What I'd like to do is bring facts and circumstances from around the metro area with some local politicos, charitable causes, and let you decide for yourself if you like what's going on.
I'm in this for public service.
400 qualified jurors in some of the rural counties are actually really hard to find.
When you're talking about low-level nonviolent offenders, when you put them in jail, you increase the likelihood that they turn into a serious offender.
Justice and Journalism with me, Judge Mike Carter.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This Week in Missouri Politics. Keep our opinion maker panel around. Jeff Rainford, look, I think Donald Trump can wear on anybody's nerves, even a person who's been a Republican for 20 years. At some point, the drama does wear on you. And you kind of think, well, maybe Nikki Haley looks like she might be good, or the guy that didn't do COVID in Florida, that sounds great. But when you start arresting him every third day, I mean, you kind of like, no, this ain't right.
Well, let me start by saying that I think that Donald Trump is a horrible human being and was the worst president since...
Is there anything nicer you could do for a horrible human being than arrest him every other day?
Well, that's the point I'm going to make. If the Democratic... almost any Democrat can beat Donald Trump. He's that bad a candidate.
For sure,
if our party blows it and he ends up getting elected to president of the United States, I'm quitting the Democratic Party and joining the no-namers or the no-labelers or whatever. If we blow this... whether it's blowing it because of the prosecution or nominating Joe Biden or because of Hunter Biden, if we blow this and he becomes president, I give us as much blame as the knucklehead Republicans who are going to vote for him.
Gregg Keller, now where I'm from, Donald Trump could be elected lifetime emperor, or even one of those weird sons of his probably could.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I do think he can grate on you a little bit. It's just always some drama and the whining about losing. But when you arrest him, I'm like, now hold on.
Yeah.
That ain't right. You aren't do that.
Yeah, I've become convinced, and I was better than 60% on this from the very beginning. I've become convinced that Donald Trump's going to be the nominee for Republicans. I did probably 10 media interviews last week on national, radio, right of center talk shows and the like. Every single one of them wanted to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. That guy is really having a moment amongst the conservative grassroots. To Jeff's point,
he ain't in West Plains.
That might be right. I have not been to West Plains in a couple of years. To Jeff's point, I think that the American people have figured out that Joe Biden has some serious senility and mental health problems. It's just, the evidence.
I think they're going to elect him over
just
Trump.
too.
I agree with you.
I think they run a real risk of losing this election if they. Jeff's
What if
exactly
it's
right.
not
It's
Joe Biden? What if they've taken Donald Trump and made the least sympathetic human being in the history of mankind, since Genghis Khan, sympathetic, and then they don't elect Biden, and they go through a primary, which I'm not sure you would get a Joe Biden type candidate. You might get some socialist, and I think Trump could win.
I don't think that they can run the risk of running Joe Biden. He's just too clearly completely deteriorated. But then it gets really complicated for them because Kamala Harris is probably maybe even less popular with the American voting public than anyone else. They're going to have real problems foisting her on the electorate. I think where they probably end up is with like a West Coast communist, like a Gavin Newsom or someone like that, someone who's telegenic, someone who's good looking, someone who's completely driven his state into a complete hellhole. But hey, at least he looks good on camera.
Well, you can't even go on drugstore in San Francisco anymore, Well, tell me this, Joe. I think I would assume you've never voted for Donald Trump.
No, I'm so sick of talking about Donald Trump.
But is there any thought? I've heard some people say this, that there's some Democrats. Donald Trump didn't put Hillary Clinton in jail. Didn't even charge her. Now I would have thought. I don't really think that was probably his idea, but somebody in his administration said, "Guys, we don't do this here. This is not Costa Rica." Nobody in the Biden White House said we don't do that in America. And I think Joe Biden's best trait is he's likable. He's a statesman, but it doesn't feel very statesmanlike try to put your opponent in jail.
We've got clear and compelling evidence that Trump was behind some dark moments in our history and potentially broke the law. And he's not above the law.
So you think it's the right move, even if it makes him sympathetic, even if it leads to a place he's in the White House, he should have been arrested 50 times last month.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Tell me now. It just feels like to me, I'm sure Trump probably broke the law. I mean, the Republicans have been so small government, they've made this a police state. I don't think they can control the Department of Justice that they've empowered now. But
I think the prosecutors, prosecutors should follow the law, right? But I don't think treason is good for democracy either. So the things that happened with the insurrection are real threats to democracy, and I think that's what we all should be concerned about.
There's just a bunch of clowns wearing stupid hats, breaking stuff, and they ought to get in trouble for it.
But
is it really an insurrection? Yeah, they ought to be in trouble for that. I don't feel sorry for any of them. Somebody had to work and pay taxes to replace the windows those clowns are breaking. So, I'd have no sympathy for those clowns. But, I've been a Republican. I've never been to protest in my life except to give a buddy a ride once. I don't really think that, I really don't feel any like it was me that should pay for some clown with a horn mask on breaking stuff. But I don't think Trump should either. You really do?
I think that we should take threats to our democracy seriously. And
put them in jail. I think you about rounded them all up, right?
People died during that.
And they ought to be. Seriously. I think it was every bit as a clown show, bunch of morons. Why aren't they at work that day is what I always wonder. If they were Democrats, people asking, why weren't you at work that day? But it's interesting to me, Jeff Rainford, at the end of the day, he's a nominee, right? And this seals it.
Yeah, it certainly seals it for now. I'm not going to make any predictions on the Republican side, but I thought Ron DeSantis was going to be the one, and now he's fallen. The guy that you like is whatever he's at 5% in the polls.
I didn't say I like him. I said he's having a moment.
But by the way, I actually agree with you. I actually agree with you that there was no chance that group of misfits was going to take over the government. By the way, there was also no chance that the group of Trump misfits was going to take over the government. Led by Rudy Giuliani. You want to talk about having a senior moment? This guy's day passed him 20 years ago. This was within the White House and at the Capitol, the gang that can't shoot straight. Now, having said that, they did riot. They did break things. He did, so I don't think he's guilty of treason. I do think he's guilty. The former president is guilty of being be part of a riot. If we were talking about Black Lives Matters and things getting burned down, Gregg would be like, everybody black should, go to prison for 90 years.
If you're at City Hall breaking stuff,
this is the same issue. And Donald Trump, he incited the riot. He ought to go to jail for that, but not for.
Should Hillary Clinton prediction time? Should Hillary Clinton have been charged with a crime for email shenanigans?
I don't know enough about the detail to know, but I'm guessing not. But
I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know the details, and I certainly break more laws than I know about. But I say no. Should Hillary Clinton have been charged?
similar. I don't know enough of the details about it.
Should Hillary Clinton have been charged with the crime for the email shenanigans, which she clearly did something squirrely?
Yeah, and she clearly broke the law. I mean, if the standard is that if you break the law, you need to go to jail, then yeah, she should be in jail now.
Should she have been? So what do you think?
I agree. If she broke the law, she should go. I do think Hunter Biden should be indicted.
If the federal government was put you in jail,
There's also every likelihood that she's directly responsible for a lot of people's deaths. So, there's that.
I mean, as is Trump, I mean, you can talk about the rise in hate
should Hillary Clinton have been charged with the crime for whatever she did?
I mean, the law is the law, right? And I think that
I don't know that the law was a law for her. And I think that was probably a wise decision by somebody. You got to give Trump credit for it. It was administration. Somebody said, you know what, guys? This is some ticky-tack little thing, like paying off that hooker or whatever in New York City. That's not illegal. And if it is, it's some technical crap. Yeah.
Are we really comparing emails to the insurrection?
Yeah, I think that's
Wait,
the difference. I mean,
the standard was if you break the law, you're going to jail.
But breaking yes, and is it a real threat to democracy? It is possibly giving Russia the upper hand. I mean, is it all those things that actually, like, if we're weighing out the cost and the punishment, does that matter? I think it does.
When you run for office now, should you be worried that if you lose the election, you'll go to prison?
If you break the law. And see, here's what I fall back on this thing. What are we supposed to do if a president or a presidential candidate breaks the law? You've made a really good point. His opponent should not be prosecuting him. That's why we have a special prosecutor.
You buy that?
If we're not going to have a special prosecutor,
you buy that? Yeah.
If we're not going to have a special prosecutor, are we saying that everybody who runs for president or president is free to break the law, and they are above the laws that all of us are required?
I feel like if I wanted to put you in jail, I might not pick Jack Garvey as a special prosecutor. But I bet I could find a lawyer that I could say that might want to put you in jail.
Well, in my case, I actually wish you would.
Last second prediction. Have the Republicans lost control of the Department of Justice that they've made into this behemoth? Have they lost control?
Have the Republicans or the Democrats?
The Republicans. They're the one that had all these laws, tough on crime. They've lost control of it, right?
Well, I don't view it that way.
Have they lost control, Greg?
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the deep state is very real.
Yeah.
We are a conspiracy. Tom's gonna kick us off the air here in a minute. Who won the week?
So I think actually, it may be the week or the last 2 weeks. I think that Andrew Bailey has won because the Democrats are just lobbing him nice softballs for him to hit out.
The Post is doing such a great job with all these silly stories. Who won the week?
Lucas Kuntz, new poll shows that he is in spitting distance within Holly. I think it's going to be a competitive race.
That's so interesting. You said that. Who won the week?
Show Me Institute had a blowout event with Corey DeAngelis talking about education reform. This is becoming a litmus test issue in the Missouri legislature. We're going to make sure that if you are a Republican elected in Jefferson City, you have got to be down the line on
You ought to drive them down 6-7, have them meet Corn Man. That'll turn you a lot of folks your way. Who won the week?
Progressives in St. Louis. We've got a conference called Local Progress happening right now through the weekend, and it's bringing progressives from all over the country to St. Louis and talking about great things, and we're going to do it. So.
Awesome. I am going to say my old buddy Cliff Smart from down in Springfield. He one of the greatest, best track record of success of any academic I've ever seen. The college and the whole state's better off for Cliff being the president of Missouri State University. I can't wait to see what holds next for him and his wife. With that, stick around if you're on ABC 30 here for Just in Journalism with Judge Mike Carter at 11 o'clock, and we'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.